Ajay Jain, who was here in the morning, he was one of the questionnaire people sort of doing the discussion of Kunzum Cafe. He's not here right now, but if he were here, I would thank him because 10 years ago when we started our company SecureNow, we had an office in Hoskas village and we spent a lot of time in his small Kunzum Cafe getting coffee. Well, it's not for free, but pay whatever you want. And all those 50 rupees we gave turned out very well. So thank you to him. I don't think he's here at the moment. Writing about insurance is actually quite difficult, and it's difficult for many reasons. One reason is that insurance deals with a messy subject. So we are talking about death, we are talking about disease, we are talking about hospitalization, earthquakes, calamities, problems. And we all have a tendency, I'm included in that, of not really being very direct when we talk about problems. So if you think about how people write about insurance, a typical phrase that would be used is that if an untoward incident happens, or somebody will say that in the case of an unfortunate tragedy, and these are all sort of there's a lot of conflict of interest in these words, but you can see that they're sort of not getting to the point. So 10 years ago, when I started writing for some of the national papers, I used to write a column on insurance and I used to write in many other places. I started trying to explore the boundary a little bit. And what I did is that in one of the columns, I used the phrase, if you die, then something, something, something. And I found that, the newspaper editors, they sort of liked that very much and it went through very well. A couple of columns later, I did a little bit more experiment, and instead of saying, if you die, something, 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 I said, when you die, something, something, something. And I think that they took they sort of very quietly changed that, back to if, because there's a natural resistance to talking about unfortunate events. That's one of the problems of writing in insurance. The other problem is that it's a legal contract, and there are claims which come thick and fast in this business. So lawyers dominate a lot of what is written in insurance, and that can be a bit of an issue. So what I'm reading from my book and giving you one example of a contract that once came to my table for approval. I was supposed to approve it, and it's pertaining to sort of a situation when a claim will not get paid. And I read out to you what came to me. If a claim is in any way found to be fraudulent, or if there's a false statement or declaration is made or used in support of such a claim, or if any fraudulent means or devices are misused by the insured person or anyone acting on behalf of the insured person, or any false or incorrect disclosure to information norms to obtain any benefit under this policy, we may reserve the right to re-underwrite or cancel the policy, and all claims being processed shall be forfeited for all insured persons, and all sums paid under this policy shall be repaid by us with a capital U, by you, who shall be jointly liable for such repayment. I really got a shock because this is a very intimidating clause. So I took out my pen and I scratched this out and I replaced it with a sentence which said, we can cancel your insurance and seek compensation if you lie. Now this again, there was a lot of discussion around this replacement, and finally the lawyers prevailed and we had to go back to the earlier clause. But this is the second problem which is there when one writes about insurance. The third aspect is that there is not much room when you're talking about insurance to be humorous or sarcastic. I used to frequently answer questions that readers of media or newspapers would write, and I'd give on insurance, and I'd sort of give a response to that. One of the papers once sent me 10 questions to answer. One of the questions was a question from a smoker who wanted to get the lower non-smoking rates in insurance, and the question he asked is, he said, look, I have done the research on nicotine in the bloodstream, and I find that after 1 week, the half-life of nicotine is 1 week. So if I stop smoking and do a test after 1 week, the nicotine traces won't show up and I'll be able to get the lower rates. Can I go ahead with this? So I answered all the 10 questions which were there, and for this question I said, son, why don't you just put the same effort in quitting smoking and you'll be much better off. And I noticed that the newspapers have sort of published all the other 9 questions, but this one, they're just left out very courteously. So that's another issue which I've often faced when you write about insurance. And one last incident which actually made me decide to write this book was 4 years ago, when my daughter was, she was leaving school and going to college to study. So I sort of wrote a column about her experiences in, of getting into a college, and the risks that she faces, and the questions in front of her, and how she can mitigate those risks. And of course, there was a reference to insurance as well, and it was a very heartfelt piece. And I called that piece Before She Flies. Now, the newspapers reserve the right to actually change the headline, and so finally when it was published, the story was intact, but the title changed to Learn About Student Insurance. And that's when I said it's time for me to write a book where I can control the narrative and make it a personal story and write what I want to do. And that's how this book really originated 4 or 5 years ago. Most of it was written during the COVID period. I'm extremely grateful to HarperCollins. Sachin is the editor who sort of worked with me and helped me move from very clinical dry business writing to something which is a much more interesting book. But I must confess, Sachin, I had 2 other editors during the course of this book. One was my son, who also read every single word that I wrote and then decided that he wants to do nothing with insurance. So now he's studying medicine in a different country. And my wife, who's here, who stuck with me, and who's here in the audience today. So thank you, for all the editing help I got. This book is basically about 2 different things. One, it is about how to deal with, to understand the uncertainties that face all of us at any stage in our life. What are the risks? To look them in the eye, to understand the magnitude, make an assessment, and see how you can address those. In many cases, insurance plays a part, but when you read the book, you'll see that there are many situations where insurance cannot actually help you address those things. But looking the risk in the eye is absolutely critical, and that's what this book is meant to do. When you do that, you begin to live a life which is stress-free as is possible, and that is why the title of this book is Happily Insured, for which also I must give full credit to Sachin for thinking this through. There's another aspect of this book which is very important. That's also a personal story, because I'm writing about my experiences which I've seen over the past so many years, and so there are lots and lots of personal stories about how insurance has made a difference. And I'm just going to read out one little bit from the introduction, which talks about these stories, and I read out: business write-ups highlight the macroeconomic impact of insurance, but it is the individual stories that showcase the value of insurance best. This is why I have written about my acquaintances, friends and family. Within these pages you will meet Kalu, a caddy at the Delhi Golf Club. You will know Vani, a batchmate from IIM Ahmedabad. By the way, another batchmate, Namrata, is going to be speaking just after me. We are both from the same batch of IIM Ahmedabad. You will travel back in time to understand my grandmother, who was born in undivided India. You will know what I felt for a retired old man in South Delhi, and you will find a kindred soul in an insurance agent. So really, there's lots of personal stories in this book, and the book format has given me the ability to actually write these stories. I'd like to finally end with reading just one more paragraph, which is again from the introductory chapter. Insurance has a lot of stigma. Maybe stigma is a strong word, but negativity associated with it. And very often I'd find that, when I would tell people I'm from insurance, there'd be a little hesitation till they realized that, till they needed something from me, maybe a claim settled or some insurance or whatever it might be the reason. So this paragraph I'm reading to you is a little bit about that. It says, I am thin-skinned and many years ago bristled at social get-togethers when people switched off on being told that I worked in insurance. A newspaper, once called Insurers, the newspaper I'm referring to is of course a newspaper in the US, the New Yorker. A newspaper once called Insurers, and by inference, executives like me, godless agents of capitalism. The credit for making me less godless must go to the lady with Parkinson's. I'm sure some of you will wonder who is this lady with Parkinson's. For that, you'll have to read the book. Thank you so much.